For this first section of the review chapter, before we get into chapter 1, I'm going to go over addition and subtraction of rational numbers. So the first thing I want to go over is how to add integers. So most of the time, if you have positive numbers or if numbers have the same sign, so they're both positive or they're both negative, you add them as normal and you keep the sign. If they have opposite signs, you need to then find the difference between the two and take the sign of the larger of the two numbers. So 7 plus 8, they're both positive, so we're going to have 15 as our answer. Negative 7 plus 8 is going to leave us with a 1 because they're opposite signs, so we subtract, and we take the sign of the 8 since it's larger than 7. Negative 7 plus negative 8 is going to be negative 15. 7 plus negative 8 is going to be negative 1. If you have a case like number 5 where you have a double negative happening here, remember your keep, change rule. So you keep the 6 and you change the next two signs. So it becomes plus plus. So you can get rid of the double plus sign and just write 6 plus 2 and get 8. Now for 6, when you have 10 minus 5, you can again change it. Keep the first one, change the sign to a plus sign, and change 5 to a negative 5. So it becomes an addition problem. So you end up getting negative 15. For number 7, you do the same thing as number 6. You can do your keep, change rule, and you should get negative 28. And for 8, you should get a positive 3. Negative 8 plus 2 is going to leave you with negative 6. Now if you start having fractions, you need to get them to have like denominators before you can try to combine them. So for this first one, think about the bottom numbers, the 12 and the 3. You should be able to make a 3 become a 12 by multiplying the top and the bottom of the fraction by 4. So we're going to take the top and the bottom times 4. So we leave the first fraction as is, and then 2 times 4 would be 8, 3 times 4 would be 12. So when we add for fractions, you leave the denominator alone. We're going to add negative 5 plus 8, and that's going to be 3. Well, 3 over 12 can reduce to 1/4. So make sure that you reduce any fractions that you can. Now for this next one, the common denominator is 36. So I need to take the first fraction times 4 over 4, and the second fraction times 9 over 9. So I'm going to have 28 over 36 minus 9 over 36, and that will leave me with 19 over 36, and that's as far as we can take that one. Now when it comes to multiplying and dividing integers, if you have an even number of negatives, your final answer is going to be positive, and if you have an odd number of negatives, your final answer is going to be negative. Remember, anytime you have a negative times a negative, or a positive times a positive, your final answer will always be positive. And if they have opposite signs, then it's always going to be negative. So what this is doing is kind of shortcutting if you have a lot of numbers that you're trying to multiply, and you've got a lot of different signs going on. You just need to count the number of negatives that you see in the problem, and that'll tell you whether your final answer is positive or negative, depending on if you've came up with an odd or an even amount of negatives. Starting with 6 times 7, that should just be 42. For number 2, negative 8 times 12 is going to be negative 96. And for 3, we should have negative 63. Continuing on here, number 4, if you multiply, you should end up with positive 60. For number 5, it should be negative 10. And for 6, it should be positive 30. The last thing I want to cover in this section is combining like terms. So if anything has the same letters, you can always stick those together by adding or subtracting. So when I see 2x plus 5x, I add the x's, or I add the numbers 2 and 5, and I get 7, and then x just attaches. You don't do anything to the x. It doesn't become x squared. For number 2, I can combine 5n and 2n. That gives me a 7n, and I have to just bring down that minus 12. Same thing with number 3. I can combine 6r and this minus 2r, so that leaves me with 4r, and then I bring down that minus 8. For number 4, x minus 9x is going to be negative 8x. Negative 3 minus 5 is going to be negative 8.